Hey, this is Pathways, and you're listening to Misery Point Radio.
Alright guys, welcome back to Misery Point Radio. I am super excited to bring you this episode today because this will mark the first time in over a year that we've been fortunate enough to have some musicians here in studio doing this live in person. So please welcome to Misery Point Radio, John Air, Kyle, and Will, otherwise known as Pathways. Guys, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is super exciting, and Kyle, I appreciate you reaching out. Now, for those of you that don't remember, Kyle disgraced us with his presence about a year ago with him and my good friend Brad the Wizard Miranda in Less Than Three. And I don't really know what's going on. Did you guys like break up and have a lover's quarrel, or did you just end up deciding that down the road things just had to go a different direction? What's going on with that?
Just went a different way and stuff. He had his own little lineup going on and stuff, and what he was doing was all right, and I just couldn't really make the time for it and stuff. But, I mean, he's still doing all right, doing his own little projects and stuff too, and, you know.
Yeah.
Just on the greener pastures, as they say.
On the greener pastures.
Yes,
well,
sir.
I do remember talking to you off camera and off air. We were talking about how you're a fan of not only that kind of music, but also of the heavier stuff, getting into the metal, getting into some of the heavier funk stuff. So we'll talk about your kind of incarnation into this band as well.
Cool.
But, so for the rest of you, I've recently become aware of your band and started really digging in here recently. And I'm really impressed by what I hear. And what I really like about it is that your sound has evolved quite a bit over just the course of kind of the start of your band, back in 2012-ish or something like that, to where we are now. So we're going to kind of talk about the evolution of your band's sound and your style and maybe some of the personnel things that have happened. But what I'd like to do is get a little bit of history then. So kind of tell us how the concept for Pathways came into existence and kind of how you went about forming this band, because there's a lot to this band.
This is a good story time because this is going to get a little crazy. So I moved back from LA and I put music on the internet. And that's it. And then I found people, and then Pathways came about.
Well, that's the long version of the story. Could
Definitely.
you possibly shorten that up for us just a little bit?
So the short version, yeah. So I went to Musician Institute in Hollywood, California. Amazing school, a lot of opportunity there. I came back home to Florida. So me and Will at the end were from South Florida, specifically Fort Lauderdale, West Palm area. I moved back home, and then I just had like this itch, and it was just like something that I had to let out, call it maybe just getting out aggression or just a lot of the influences that I had over the years. And then started putting up music, found musicians, and then found Will. And then we started writing together, and we just gelled and meshed just right away. It was awesome. Great relationship. Between the formation and now, there's been a lot of in-between, but there's been around 13 to 14 to maybe even 15 previous members that led to this point. So that's like the brief history of the formation.
Yeah, I've kind of seen, just based off some of the social media posts and some of the just kind of tracking the history, that there's been quite a bit of movement, which is to be expected with musicians because y'all are a bunch of flaky motherfuckers, let's be honest.
Always.
Especially drummers.
We're the
Guilty as charged.
Awesome. So now your earlier sound, I think, quite often gets at the risk of being classification-y. We hear the words like metalcore and deathcore and kind of that stuff. Yeah, gent with that hard D. I like to say gent. So, but yeah, it's definitely your style is very progressive in the sense that you use really a lot of melody, a lot of staccato, a lot of time signature changes, and things like that. So those elements haven't really changed, but kind of I think on the earlier works, what I really noticed was that there was a very definitive metalcore-y sound. Was that by design, or I know you went to Musicians Institute and there was kind of a lot of theory and a lot of classical stuff involved in that as well. So did you set out to kind of say, hey, I want to make this kind of a band, or did it just evolve organically?
You know, I think a lot of it had to do with where I was in my life at the time, where I kind of wanted the chaos. My life was a little bit in shambles, and I was just figuring out, I would call it the age of enlightenment.
Ooh.
And I was finding myself, didn't know where I wanted to be, and so that's why the earlier stuff, it was like, there was like no transitions in the music. It was just randomized, chaotic. At the time, I thought that was so unique, and then I was like, I'm fucking unique. But turns out I was just another schmo writing random music, and but that was definitely the definitive sound that I wanted. I wanted chaos, and I think that reflected in the music. And you're right, there was a lot of time signature changes, a lot of staccato, a lot of classical stuff. It's always been this love child between like Mozart and like just metalcore, and like I've always liked breakdowns and singing choruses and stuff like that, while also sticking to roots of like chuggy riffs and also like good compositions. So between all that, it just, you can definitely hear the progression. And I'm so embarrassed when I hear the early stuff, because I'm like, it was just like there wasn't much guidance. I was a Padawan without my Jedi master.
Raw power.
Oh, you know, we're Star Wars nerding out here today. For folks you out there in the audience that don't know, but we're all a bunch of Star Wars nerds, which is pretty awesome. And so I love the Padawan reference there. I think it worked though. Like I really enjoyed the sound. So as probably a new listener like myself would be, you don't have those biases. You don't have those. Yeah. You know, as a quote unquote musician myself, not really. I'm terrible. But
that's not true.
It's always, you're more critical of your own stuff, and so you released three kind of albums / EPs before, I guess, deciding that you wanted to leave that area and make your way from Florida to the Pacific Northwest.
Yep, you nailed it. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
And so was the catalyst for that change that you weren't happy with the whole area? Or was it just that you really said, I need to start over and get a new change of scenery and get some new inspiration so I can work on new material that has a different sound?
Honestly, it's 100% the latter. I wanted that change of scenery so bad. I came out here on vacation, fell in love with the place. I didn't initially want to come out here. I always thought Seattle was kind of a joke, because in Florida, all we hear about is how much it rains in Kurt Cobain. And for the most part, that's true. But there's so much more to the Pacific Northwest, and I fell in love with this place. This place, it just has everything to offer as far as environment goes, and the people. Man, the people out here are just like yourself, Mike. Like, it's just, you're so welcoming and just so awesome. And in Florida, we're surrounded by a bunch of assholes.
Well, none of you will make it out here alive, just so you know, but that's cool. So you come here with an idea that you kind of want to set some new things in motion. You and Will did you both make the journey together?
No. Yeah, he was out here like a good solid year before I came.
Okay.
And I visited him to shoot a music video the summer before I moved here. And he was like, Will, would you ever consider moving out here? And I was like, I don't know, man. I love Florida. I got a pretty cool life out there. But then I came out a second time, because everywhere's cool the first time you go. And
right.
and I came out during autumn, the supposed, when things start to go to shit. And it was still pretty great. By that winter, I'd already decided I'm moving out here. I mean, since then, I haven't looked back. I've loved it out here so far.
It's been, like a year and a half, almost 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the indoctrination into the cult. How did you come across this guy, this Kyle guy, and Jean Air? How did these two come into the fold? And I guess each of you can probably individually speak on that.
I love that you said "come into the fold" because "we're right back in the fold" is one of the lyrics of one of our songs off the album.
Yeah, I totally knew that.
You didn't even get that track, and you knew it.
So I just got hit up randomly back like in August and stuff, and this dude's like, "Hey man, I like you guys' music, great playing." And like I was saying before, it's like for like guitarists and like bassists to like say like, "Hey, nice playing," it's a very flattering compliment. But anyway,
best compliment ever. Your playing's pretty dope.
Your playing's pretty dope. Oh god, my life was made. But yeah, so we got talking. I was like, "Oh, thanks, man." And then saw this guy's profile, John. Okay. Oh wow. Oh my god, they rip. Holy cow. Yeah, this guy can play.
Not his Tinder profile, right? Different profile.
Grindr.
This was my Grindr. Yeah.
His OnlyFans.
Yeah. Lucky me. But yeah, so started looking through their stuff, Pathways. I was like, hey, yeah, this sounds awesome. So he sent me one of their tunes from what will be released for the full length album. Sent me a bass solo to learn, so I learned this little section of a song, and then took me a good like 4 or 5 hours or something.
Didn't expect him to even get it. It was more of like a troll thing, to be honest.
Yeah, we definitely gave
It
him
was
one
a
of
difficult section. for
the
sure.
harder parts of the bass.
Yeah.
It's got all sorts of slap in, some tap in, every major flex on the bass. He turned it around like a motherfucker.
So you
Nailed it.
expected him to fail, and he surprised you.
Yeah, we were like,
Yeah.
well, if he can make it through this, then he can play anything else on the album, most likely. And Johnny, how we end up finding you?
I got a random email from John, and basically was asking me if I wanted to front a metal band. I had been in a band a year prior, and it had been a long layover since my last musical endeavor. Kind of told myself the last one would be the last one, and then when I saw what Pathways was doing, I said, okay, I'll give this a shot.
Yeah, and your vocal delivery is quite a bit different, I think, than, say, the prior vocalist. And that's not to badmouth the prior vocalist. You can definitely see, I think, and hear what your vocal delivery brings to kind of help set the new sound. I don't know if new sound's the right way to say it, but kind of the current incarnation of the sound, I think, really sets Pathways apart now versus where it was prior. I also noticed now, I don't know if this is a temporary thing or a permanent thing, but are you guys just going to rock the one guitar? Because prior you had a rhythm guitar. From everything I've seen now, it looks. Are you moving forward just as a 4-piece?
So the addition of Kyle plays a 6-string Dingwall bass.
I know.
And
NG3, baby.
that thing, first off, I don't even know how to put it into words. I've never even quite seen a 6-string bass like this. And then bottom line is Kyle can handle all that is needed in that support of the low end section. So in that groove, in the pocket, there's really, to be honest, no need for a rhythm guitar.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you say that too, because like rhythm guitar to me is like a bass's #1 enemy. Like that's the one guy that's gonna wash me out every single time. Hate that.
Well, so actually, what I was hoping to hear was we're gonna totally Jason Newsted you out of the mix.
Yeah.
The and Justice for All
Yeah,
mix,
yeah.
yeah.
Can't hear that kick drum. I still can't hear it.
Yeah,
it's that bass.
the new album is called No Justice for Kyle. And,
Yeah.
okay, so that makes perfect sense because
Yeah.
I mean, prior you guys were kind of known as like this dueling. I don't know. Were you both using 8 strings?
Yep, dueling 8-string guitars, yep.
I can't wrap my head around an 8-string gutar. I've tried. I can't even. It's not my head I can't wrap around it. It's my fucking hand I can't wrap around
Right.
it. But those things are.
Boat paddle.
Yeah, they're beastly. So that whole style of that you guys kind of became known for early on, Kyle, with your 6-string slapping madness, have really kind of complemented that. So it's not so much a matter of a lead guitar and a rhythm guitar,
Correct.
as much as it's just a really good blend of sound that works well together. And you know, Will, your drumming. It seems like you take a very, like, your drum phrases, they're very methodical. It's not just like a bunch of random fills and cymbal crashes. So what I've noticed about this stuff is that every instrument really stands out in the mixes, whether or not it's the old stuff or some of the new things I've heard. So when you guys get together, is this a matter of you saying, okay, I want to emphasize the guitar on this part, I want to emphasize the drum on this part? Is there like a cohesive plan behind that sound?
Yeah, that's an awesome question because, yeah, you're pretty right. We made the decision when John and I came out here that we ultimately wanted to go for a quartet. We wanted every member to be the master of their own domain. When it comes to songwriting, like, okay, like in the new song that we sent you for you to review, it has both a guitar solo and a bass solo. That rips.
Yeah, that does fucking rip.
And, you know, throughout the album, you'll hear a lot of guitar solos. You'll hear parts where the instrumentals drop out and then, you know, the drums may be driving it, or you hear parts where all the instruments drop out and it's just Jean-Pierre's voice and a pad. So, like, everything is, like, specifically made for the music to complement itself in the way that it tells a story.
Yeah. Each of you has a completely different background as far as the style of music that you come from. And so there's some hip-hop influences, there's some metal influences,
Definitely.
there's some funk influences, there's some, William Hung influences, all kinds of cool stuff. So how do you take all of that stylistic difference and come together in this band? Like, what is it that each of you feels makes that work?
I mean, in terms of blending genres and I guess influences, I'm kind of a poster child for this, I guess, because as much as I love metal, I don't really listen to it all too much, and I think the same is true for all of us. Despite being in a metal band, we don't really listen to it outside of what we play. For me personally, I love old school hip hop. I grew up in a Turkish household, so I listened to Turkish pop growing up. I love Linkin Park, old school post-hardcore. Yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, it's easy to kind of bring all those influences to the table when I'm writing. I don't really know how it is for everybody else, but we definitely do bring our own twist.
Yeah. Incidentally, I'm not familiar with Turkish pop.
I wouldn't expect most people to.
You're not? I can't imagine any are.
So, so there's a cultural element, I think, in the element that you kind of bring to the table, I guess, would be one way to look at it?
Yeah, one way to look at it. And I guess what separates Turkish pop from, I guess, American pop would be obviously the scales that they play in the music. It has more of that Middle Eastern tinge to it. Mm-hmm. And when I'm singing, I find that I tap into those scales a lot of the time, just subconsciously.
Yeah.
It just kind of comes out.
There is kind of that harmonic minor vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Harmonic
minor.
Yeah, so those augmented sevenths and stuff like that, I picked up on that a little bit. That's the extent of my musical prowess there as far as identifying that goes. But
it's pretty good.
Solid.
The flat third and sixth, I think.
Yeah, that is definitely an element of that I picked. But it's not like in your face. Like, it's not a bunch of just creeping death, like all of that kind of stuff, and it's not just so blatant about it, but it's very subtle, and I think it works, really well. So when you're kind of composing the songs and then like the vocal melodies, I assume that are each of you kind of writing your parts and then the next is kind of complementing and then the next is complementing, or are you getting together and kind of saying, hey, let's try to figure out a vibe like this?
Yeah, so the conventional or orthodox method is getting together and jam it out,
Yeah.
And our method is definitely unorthodox, but works. And I always like to say that it's just super efficient. It's more like a business mindset. And what we'll do is we typically start off with what I would imagine most bands start off with is kind of like a riff, and then you just build off of it. A regular melody or a motif that's just a reoccurring melody. Incidentally, it usually starts off in around a harmonic minor scale, the Phrygian. We just kind of ride that because that's more of our sound, that blend of metal and classical. To answer your question further, we use MIDI programming.
Guitar Pro.
Guitar Pro. That's kind of our thing. It'll start there, and then what I'll do is I'll write maybe good like 32 bars, something like that, and then maybe I can give that to Kyle, and he adds his flair, and Will add his flair. And John Air...
I'm usually the icing on the cake.
Yeah. John Air will come in, usually when the music's done, but he'll recommend what he wants, a certain sound or maybe lyrics, and we can reflect that in the music. But it'll always start with the riff, and then we just keep building and building and building and building.
During the course of our current lovely situation we're in, quarantines and whatnot, have you guys been able to get together, aside from the video shoot stuff that we'll kind of talk about in a little bit there? I mean, are you rehearsing together, or are we doing the send each other the files and kind of jam in our own house kind of a mentality?
Our first time playing this song, Goo, Great Old Ones, was for the music video.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we all play to a metronome anyways.
It's weird, but it works.
Yeah. So I also then no live shows for you guys with this lineup as well at this point.
Not
Right,
yet.
because we solidified everything in like right around pre-quarantine, and then right when we hit this, there's just no shows really.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So I'm pretty old school. Like I come from the era prior to electronic recording. When I was playing in bands and recording, we were recording on tape. And we were mastering to ADATs.
Awesome.
And
hardcore.
So, yeah, super hardcore. Splicing.
Actual
splicing. Physically splicing
Cut
tape.
and tape.
Yeah. And then, doing your own, like, old school multi-tracking where you take, like, a fucking tape recorder and record yourself playing guitar. And then you tape another tape recorder and, have, like, a drum track in the background. And then you play them both at the same time and record a third track. And then you bounce them, like, 20 times. So that was kind of how the Sketchpad worked for me back in the early days.
That's so
and
mad.
so it's fucking crazy. And so now when you think about, like, the advent of say Pro Tools or Logic or even video integration into recording software where you can send files back and forth and jam in real time, That's blows my mind. But I talk to people every day, or that's what they're doing. So you guys are kind of along that same line. So now that we've established, the fact that you guys really are just now coming together with this lineup and things are kind of starting to fall into place, we have a new single to kind of coincide with a new album that you guys are working on, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The album's actually done.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask about that. So when did the album get recorded? Has this been done for a while, or was this basically a COVID project that you just put the fucking speeder bike on and said go?
Yeah, I mean, definitely COVID acted as like a catalyst for it, but it all started with that dang symphony. So we did the symphony, and then we had one goal in mind with the symphony, is to reference every single melody of this poem, this big symphonic poem, into the album. So we would chop up each little piece and each little motif and make it into a song on the album. So that was in 2017. So since 2017, it's been kind of up in the air and being worked on. So, but it was finished with John Ayer's vocals maybe about, I would say, 8 months ago.
Okay.
Sounds about right. It was the end of last summer.
So it wasn't necessarily a COVID project. It just kind of worked out that you maybe had a little bit of extra time now to
Exactly.
Put the fucking rainbow sprinkles on it and kind of finish it up.
Exactly.
That's where you come in, John Ayer. You're the rainbow sprinkles.
Yes,
the icing,
I am.
Right?
I am the rainbow sprinkles. And actually, when I came into it, the songs already had a lot of vocals done. Possibly every single song was finished, and I kind of just replaced the prior vocalist with my vocals.
Okay, got it. Well, so did that when you were doing that? Now, did you take what was already kind of committed to that tape and do your best to kind of represent that original vision, or did you come in and say, I like this, but I really want to do it this way?
So when I first started, I didn't even want to listen to the original vocalist because I wanted to just see what my ideas would sound like without any outside influence. And then I went back later and listened to what the old vocalist had done. And there were some spots that I thought were better than what I did. And I don't want to say I ripped off of him necessarily, but I definitely found influence in some of the things that he did. And some parts on the album are influenced by that. But I'd say like 95% of it was original.
I think that's pretty awesome, especially when we're talking about like frontmen or front women, people that tend to become the face and the voice of a band.
Yeah.
Especially when there's a change in vocalists, it often creates a split between like an old fan base and a new fan base.
Certainly.
As well as the approach for the songwriters, of which style to go. So the fact that you can take another vocalist stuff and say, hey, that's really good. I really like that. I mean, personally, I wouldn't look at it like you were taking from them in the sense of stealing it as much as honoring that person's vision as well as honoring the vision of the song as it originally stood.
Yeah.
And I think not a lot of people are comfortable enough in their own skin to do that. So I think that's pretty remarkable.
Thanks.
Yeah, the process, even just watching John Ayer do it, just like as a bystander, watching him, because we were there, like me and Will were there for most of the recording, Will more than me, but just watching John Ayer just go over this with his fresh spin was just like, it was so refreshing. It was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that symphony for a second, because this kind of blows my mind. Now, there's been a lot of bands over the years that have tried to pull out this symphonic stuff out of their ass, and some of it works, and some of it, in my opinion, is an epic fail. So, you worked with like a full symphony. I'd like to know, how did you get this wild hair up your ass to work with the symphony? And then, did you, John, did you score this yourself? I mean, I know you're like this super nerdy school guy, but I mean, did you just one day say, I want to write a fucking symphony, and then you just did it?
That's exactly it. I remember I was on the John was on the John, and I was scrolling through a bunch of Tchaikovsky songs, and then I was just like,
As
what?
we all do.
Yeah, while on the loo.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment where I knew that it was my calling. It was destiny. And I'm not even being sarcastic here. So I had no idea what an orchestrator was, and I wanted to do true symphonic form, and I wasn't really necessarily aware of that. And it's very difficult to do that kind of thing. It's easy to write melodies, but to put it in different movements, with allegro movements, fast movements, slow movements. Where do you do like the sonata section? Like how do you formulate this so that it makes sense, so that I'm doing kind of justice to this? So I found what's known as an orchestrator, and I had no idea what that even was. So there's a composer and an orchestrator, and a composer is someone who will actually write the melodies, and that part was kind of easy, but the orchestrator is the person who says, okay, that melody has to go to the string section over here, and this melody goes in the bass section, this melody goes to maybe the brass section, maybe this goes to the woodwinds. And he helped me out a lot because I had all of these melodies and I was like, I don't know who I want to write this. And then he came in and he basically sat me down and he was like, well, we could do this, we could go this way, we could go left, we could go right. And then we kind of sat down for hours and we went back and forth, and then we developed and we wrote the score. So the score was written, but it had to have been applied to paper, and then that had to have been sheet music to all the 42 people in the orchestra. And that was the most pain in the ass process ever, but it was so fulfilling and so rewarding in the end.
Yeah. I'm curious because it doesn't seem like something that overtly would fit into, I guess, what your concept would be, right? I mean, it's kind of like it's so different than the other stuff. So how does that tie in to the direction now that this band is moving?
Always having those symphonic elements, it just made it more clear cut to us that we needed to define our sound. And in order to do that, we had to come out swinging and on the largest wave that we can possibly make, the biggest splash. And that's where John, Aaron, Kyle kind of came in. So the other stuff that we were talking about earlier, it was very progressive and chaotic. And now we all wanted to focus more on melody and bring this to a different direction. And we're hoping that we've officially found our sound. And like, I know that sounds cliche and it sounds really like very generalized, but you know what? I couldn't word it in any other way.
There's a word that John and I use often. It's called timeless. The idea is if you listen to an artist from the 70s, they sound like often an artist from the 70s. Or you listen to a metalcore band from 2012, they sound like that. The idea was to write a song that you wouldn't know what year it was from, and write an entire album that was structured around that concept. So taking something as timeless as classical music, hundreds of years before any of us were born, putting that over our own instrumentals, and then finding a vocalist that could mesh well with that was a very difficult process, and it took a while to write, but when it did, we're so proud of it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty epic, when you, and there's a video that goes with it that is equally impressive because, when you see the amount of people involved in that project, just from a viewer's standpoint, it's pretty mind-boggling. And you know what it kind of reminds me of? It's very Trans-Siberian Orchestra was kind of the vibe I got off it. And not to go down a rabbit hole, but it does remind me that you guys just, even as kind of another side kind of tangent you've done, is these kind of fun little holiday themed kind of stuff. Now I have seen Trans-Siberian in concert probably 4 times. And it's epic, and so
that's on another level of epic.
It's it's epic, but that, so I kind of got that vibe off it, and so what I like about that concept is it's got these metal elements, it's got these classical elements, it's got these traditional elements, and so this new album that's a full-length album that you guys are working on, what can we expect out of that? I mean, are we going to see a myriad of styles within this, or are we going to see kind of a cohesive theme?
It's going to be interesting because the single that we're releasing first was actually the last musical piece that was written. So everything on the album was actually written before this newest song. I'd say the glue is probably the symphony.
Our whole thing is no filler songs. There's sometimes when you hear an album and you're honestly, there's a lot of albums I listen to where I only like maybe 2 to 4 tracks off of a whole 12-song album.
Yeah, absolutely.
To answer that question, it's thematic in a way. So it definitely has a concept theme to it.
Okay. Musically or lyrically or both?
Not so much lyrically, probably definitely more so musically. We were actually tossing around the idea of making the album based on a Alice in Wonderland type thing, and we didn't end up doing that, maybe in the future. In terms of a story, that's a concept we were playing with, but I think the concept is more in the music.
Yeah.
We're going to do the Alice theme in the future, though.
Yeah, think about it as Dies Irae was a concept album lyrically about the 4 Horsemen, while the self-titled album will be a concept based off of the movements of the symphony.
Yeah, that's awesome. And which also, there's a band called Believer back in the day, and they were like a Christian thrash band that I actually liked quite a bit. while I was wearing my satanic metal clothes and listening to some of these Christian bands. And but they had a song called Dies Irae, which is Day of Wrath.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic song, and it was full of, you know, Bible verses and prophecy and things like that. But it was such a heavy song. So it's funny that you guys have a song called that, because your song is also a very heavy song, albeit a completely different theme and style and message and everything like that. But it is a very powerful, I don't want to say angry, but it's a heavy, dark song.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool. So let's talk then about the first single that you're gonna release, or that you have released. Let's talk about that. What's what is it, and tell us about it.
It's a little groovier. The verses kind of sound more like creepy crawly, like hip hop, then gets into some more like some slappage, and then even gets like into the bass solo and stuff. Like that was kind of me and John heading that one. And like for me, it's like, okay, I wrote a bass solo, you know, it sounds like a bass solo, but then like to have a guitarist like put their own little flair into it, then it just like really actually made it into like it's like a guitar player writing a bass solo. And that's basically kind of what I want to try and be sometimes, is like a bass player that wants to be a pretend guitarist, you know.
Kyle is a multi-instrumentalist, though. He can play guitar.
Yeah, he
too.
plays a mean skin flute. So one of the things that
I can show you guys now.
hey, it's all on video. This will be available to subscribe.
Yeah, on our OnlyFans. Catch him.
We also have an OnlyFans.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I do notice that, you know, Kyle, stylistically, you move very flawlessly from like a very metal-oriented pick pattern, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
To some funky slappage, to a little bit more traditional fingerstyle bass, and, you know, some tap in and all that kind of cool stuff. So I do like that element of that. So what is the name of this first single?
Great Old Ones.
Also known as Goo.
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 Good
We've
boys.
been calling it Goo, and it's just
It's
fun
a
to
gooey
say
single.
Goo.
Giggity giggity goo.
Exactly.
So this Great Old Ones, has kind of a Lovecraftian horror kind of a
110%.
backstory behind it. Tell us about that.
So I'm a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan. I've got a collection of his works at home. That's what the lyrics are based off of, and when I first got the song sent to me, I just thought, this is insanely creepy. I got to throw some spooky, creepy lyrics on this. And I was reading Lovecraft at the time, so I was just super inspired. The idea behind Great Old Ones is we as people get caught up in our own world a lot of the time, and we kind of forget that there are other problems out there. There's a whole universe out there that's bigger than us. And when we get wrapped up in our own problems, we forget about that. And that's kind of what the song is about.
Awesome. Now, is that kind of a standalone on what's coming out? That kind of is its own concept, if you will?
Yeah. This is pretty separate from the album because, like I said, this came after. This was written after the album. The album was done, and then we got into Goo. It would be nice if it kind of ties in.
Oh, got it. So it's not even on the album. It's a completely
Correct. This is a
separate
standalone single.
track. Yep.
Now that makes sense. Okay, now it's kind of falling. Hey, I'm dense. I'm old. It takes me a little while to get these things together. So, okay, that's cool. I really like the concept that you guys have an album. Plus, there's obviously other material that's kind of in the works as well. So you guys you're staying busy. You're pushing forward. You're making new, I guess, movements within the band. Speaking of new movements, though, let's talk about these videos, because these videos are fucking badass. So there's of course the symphonic video, and then there is one for, I believe is it Misery? Is that how it's pronounced? Now, I really liked that video because it had a very cool like black and white kind of motif, and then we move into the new video, which it's got this Victorian vibe to it. And I gotta say, Kyle, by the way, you're very fucking James Bond in this.
Really is.
Very mysterious.
Very dapper, and you clean up well.
Thank you.
You look like shit every other time.
Yeah.
It was just that one day, and it all came together. It takes a lot to put
No
this
skins
together.
in the video.
Yeah, none of that. Yeah.
So, one of the things that I am starting to see it as becoming a thing that a lot of bands are doing is introducing video concepts back into the fold. For a while, they just kind of went away because, you know, they're expensive and they're timely, and
Sure.
you know, they take a lot of many people involved in the process to kind of pull these off. So why decide to do videos, and especially why I decided to do a new video. Is this supposed to be a promotional launch for the album? Was that the idea behind it, to say, look, we got something new and here's some tasty eye candy for you as well?
It's definitely to stir up buzz around the album. Of course, we also want to promote the single itself, but in today's climate, like, video content is huge, and being able to keep people engaged with your content, like audience retention, this is kind of going into like algorithms and whatnot and how that all works, but audience retention is huge. So to be able to grab somebody's attention and keep it is crucial as any kind of content creator, whether you're a musician or a YouTuber or whatever. And so we're just really trying to do that.
Nowadays, very ADD minds.
Yeah, very ADD
It's
minded.
hard to capture attention.
Now, this was filmed kind of in this really cool, like, mansion Victorian setting.
Yes.
Was that your idea, or did your videographer say, dude, I got this place, check this out? How did that come into be?
It was the videographer that really hooked us up.
Yeah.
Carl, yeah.
Yeah.
He really set us up with that.
Epic Victorian mansion, and I mean, like, this had every little element of like what we thought described the sound, like Baroque, and a lot of like amber tones and like.
Baroque is a great way to look at that. That was
Yeah.
kind of the vibe that I got off
Yeah.
it, for sure. What was that movie? Eyes Wide Shut. It kind of
Yes.
gave me an Eyes Wide Shut vibe. I was
That's exactly
thinking,
what we were going
like,
for.
you know, where's
Specifically, yeah.
Nicole Kidman kind of popping out of the woodwork?
Uh-huh.
It had that really cool with the costumes and the masks and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was really cool. What was that experience like shooting in that location? Because that just seemed super badass.
That was actually
Yeah.
the tentative name for the video, right?
Super badass?
Eyes wide. Well, yeah, obviously super badass, but Eyes Wide Shut. That's what we were going for. We actually had a lot more grandiose ideas to reflect the music, with this being like that perfect segue from this and then to the album after being so silent for so long. And we wanted to have like that ballroom dance, and we wanted to get into it like that. But you know, once we realized what we were dealing with COVID, and a lot of people backed out at the last minute, so we kind of had to go with roll with the punches, so to speak.
It was a hustle.
It was a hustle, but we found this guy. His name is Carl with Hot Carl Productions in Portland. Yeah, he's like the guy. Like when someone says like, "Yo, I got a guy," he is that guy.
Absolutely.
And he has a lot of connections, a lot of strippers, which was good for us because we needed seductive dancing. We had like this whole idea planned out.
Wait,
and
were they actually strippers in the video?
Yes.
real life strippers? You know,
Okay.
when you come in contact with one, it's like a dinosaur. You don't want to be too afraid. But at the same time, they were true masters of their crafts. Like, honestly, they were awesome.
Fun, like, kicking it with them, too. Just, like, bullshitting and stuff.
How
But they all
rockstar
work.
was that? In a mansion,
Oh.
and just kicking it with strippers all day.
Yeah, and even drinking champagne, too.
And
yeah,
love
that was
and
cool.
professional catering from Subway.
Yes, only
True.
the best. Ham
Classy.
and cheese all day, baby.
The production was pretty, I don't want to say large scale just because I don't really have, you know, the experience to
A
back
reference
that up.
point, yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, it genuinely felt like we were filming a movie. Like, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely the largest production I've been a part of as
Yeah.
far as, like, video goes.
It was so well done. I really enjoyed the visuals. I couldn't shake the Eyes Wide Shut meets James Bond vibe that I got off of it.
Cool.
Yeah, so it was really cool. And I also like the fact that it's kind of got this part of it looks like you're all a bunch of actors, right? And then part of it's like, oh, here's my fucking drum sets right here, you know, and here's my guitar.
middle of the parking
in the
lot.
middle of the parking lot, we're all jamming, you know. I thought that was a really cool idea. So are there going to be more?
Yeah, we've already
Hopefully.
got 2 more videos shot and edited, and then we've got an additional lyric video all
Okay.
set up for the album. We just want to have
Right.
enough content to keep people, you know, happy. We've been gone for a while, and we want to make sure that when we come back, we really show them that we were thinking about them the whole time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because there has been a period of time because, you know, the last EP launched in, 2016, so we're looking at about a 5-year hiatus.
Yep.
And that hiatus, really, you took that time to, I guess, develop a new pathway, right? See what I did there? It kind of work on the concept, work on, you know, the vibe of the band and get some new stuff going. But when you relaunch, you're going to launch with a lot of content. It
right.
seems to be the goal. So question number 1 on that then is, do we have a name for the album that we're ready to release yet?
Self-titled. We were
Yeah.
just going to do a ballsy move and just go straight south. This is who we are, Pathways.
Cool. Is it going to be an
Boom.
all-black cover with maybe a snake
with maybe
on
a
it?
snake, a gray snake, yeah, black album.
Or maybe an all-white album? So, okay.
With Kyle's
That'll be
skin
the next
flute.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be on the cover of the next one.
Right.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
It'd be like Spinal Tap. That'd be awesome.
yeah.
Gotta do that.
I always make Spinal Tap references, and hardly anybody ever gets them. But I
Can I
don't
get
know.
blacker? It's not.
Turn it up to 11.
That's one louder, isn't it? So yeah. Okay. So we've got self-titled album. Now that we've got the album recorded, like all the stuff is done, do we have an anticipated release date? Is there a window we can look forward to? What's the plans for this?
Honestly, at this point, we're using the single, The Goo, to gauge everything. So we were on a label. We were on Tragic Hero Records. We dissolved our contract. When we moved out here, we needed time. And, although we're a small part of what is considered the industry, we learned that content, is king. So if you're either inactive or not pushing any content, then you just need to take a break. Like, you can't try to milk any kind of support at that point. And we're using this to kind of gauge whether we're going to do this independently or try to get some support. So that's kind of our mindset right now. So everything is in the hands of the single.
So now the single, obviously, I've heard it, and you've heard it. Has it been released officially yet?
Not yet. March
Okay.
26th.
No.
So that brings us there too. So March 26th. What's going to happen on March 26th?
So we have a 6-week release plan that we've been doing to build up our own preparation. You can expect a lot of content for the same form of media. Just sharing the same link doesn't work anymore. So March 26th is the official release date. That's when we'll go live on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, anything that you use. March 25th, we're going to have a premiere with a publication named Metal Injection.
I know Metal Injection quite well.
Fantastic. During the 2-week build up to the actual release date, we will be doing more live sessions, engaging with our community. We'll be releasing merch individually for this solo single, and then after the song is released on March 26th, we'll have multiple versions of content for it, such as remixes. We'll have competitions, just to try and reconnect with our fans. Let them know, hey, we haven't forgot about you. We missed you a lot. Thank you so much for waiting. Here's some new music. By the way, we have a lot of new music on the way after this too.
Yeah.
And most importantly, announcing Kyle and John Air.
Right?
Oh yeah, those guys.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think what is kind of setting you apart right now is the fact that you have a very cohesive plan for what you're
Sure.
going to do with the content. So it sounds like what you're saying to me in a lot of words is, Mike, I don't want to give you a release date yet because we really are going to test the waters
100%.
before we really kind of go down that hole. But you have a very good plan for what you're going to do in terms of social media, in terms of partners with,
Sure.
radio media, stuff like that, which is great. What do you think the fans that have been with you from the get-go, who know you as a more traditional, deathcore, metalcore, progressive band, how do you think they're going to respond to kind of the newer stuff? I don't see it as being like a drastic departure, but there are some thematic and stylistic differences that I think are being explored. Do you think that it will resound well with the OGs?
The resonance is always going to be there. We've been pretty lucky with an established fan base of people that at least want to support us. And there are, of course, people that have been there from the beginning, people that have come on just recently and have heard something from 2016. And the most common thing we get is, when are you guys going to release new music? And every time we answer this, we're like, how do we say this? And do we say we've been working on it? Do we blame it on the pandemic? But we can say this. We have been working on it. We've been more busy than we've ever been behind the curtains. And, all of the elements are still there that makes the music what it is. If we had a gimmick, if there was such a thing as one, a shtick, it would be our blend of classical music. It's not really a common thing. A lot of bands think they have a really pronounced and unique sound, and we'd like to think that we do, but that is definitely our thing, is the classical influences. So it's definitely what stands us apart. Not so sure about the unique factor, but to answer your question, I do think all of the elements are there. There are going to be fans that are going to love it. There are going to be people, I think, that are going to absolutely despise it. But
I'm ready for the hate from the elitists.
Yeah, but no matter what,
I refer to them as purists, but
Purists.
yeah, metal purists. And I think that it's more of a statement than anything. We finally found the sound that works for us. And honestly, if we're proud of it, even if this flops, I would love. We have a running joke where it's just like, let's just go down with the ship, each one of our members, and like I would like to go down with the ship, even if it sells 100 copies. I am fine. Like I'm good with this.
You know, you guys are like the string quartet on Titanic, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Another brandy, gentlemen.
It's been
It's just been a pleasure. My man.
I love it.
We salute each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
However, I mean, doing some social media stalking of you guys, I mean, realistically, you've got, what, fucking 30,000 followers on the Facebook. Your videos have over 100,000 views. I mean, let's just say, worst case scenario, that half the people that follow you, you know, download a single, buy a single, you know, do a one purchase or a digital, or, you know, front for a hard copy. I don't think there will be a challenge in terms of sales by any stretch of the imagination. I think really what will be the challenge is what all musicians are facing right now is how do we stay relevant in this time frame, you know, with COVID, and, you know, how do we navigate the digital platforms, which are far less profitable for musicians? You know, how do we balance putting out physical product and getting it to people? How do we let people know that we have all this stuff kind of in the works, and let people know that there is new material on the horizon? I mean, if you want to hold off on announcing release dates, but you've got content in the meantime, I think that works in your benefit. I see a lot of bands that are saying, we're going to wait till the time is right to say all this stuff, but in the meantime, you give people nothing.
Yeah.
And you're giving them something.
Right.
Okay, cool. So March 26th, we get some really, really, really cool stuff from you guys. And then after that, is it going to be just a wait and see the response, or are you already have plans in motion for that day forward as well?
We're keeping in mind that songs do have a shelf life.
Sure.
But we definitely want to stay relevant. Once this is out, we can't stop and slow down. You know, we got to keep working, keep interacting with everybody. In terms of a solid plan, though, we're going to ride this single out for, you know, the month, 5-week period. And then I think, like John said, we'll play it by ear.
But you've
see
got
where
a
that
couple
goes.
of other videos in the meantime, so I assume that there will be other singles released as well. Are you going to put a cap on singles, or just keep releasing them and see how they go?
We have the album finished. We have content for the album. Goo is a standalone single that we can show our new sound to fans, let them know there has been a change.
It's a bonus track.
Yeah,
More or
essentially.
less, yeah.
And then for the album content, we have a plan for each individual single. You know, for the boring terms, gauge our analytics, find out where our listeners are. We did have this ready prior, but you know, we wanted to wait out a little bit of the saturation of content during the quarantine.
Okay.
You know, you can only wait so long, though. We already made them wait long enough. It's time that we put it out there, and then we have that plan that only gets more and more solidified for the following singles from the album.
Okay. Now, is this entire project, I mean, is it mixed and mastered and pretty much ready to package at some point when you decide?
Donezo.
Done. Fucking done.
Weapons Prime.
And are you going to self-release it? Is that decided yet? You left your prior label on good terms. Has there been talks of maybe reworking with them again? What are we going to do for distribution? Or is that even a conversation you've had yet?
Singles and EPs are having a resurgence. They're having a huge comeback. The days of releasing an album and kind of doing a tour and then releasing an album and tour would be a thing, but that's just not the, you know, the state of the world right now. So what a lot of people are doing is just singles upon all of our favorite bands, and a lot of relevant bands are doing like three song EPs. They're releasing singles here and singles there. So that's why we're kind of doing to gauge this, but we do have solidified plans when it comes to merchandising and distribution. We already have that down. We have learned things from being on the label as far as getting back on with Tragic. We've had some talks about that, but we really just want to see where we can gauge the rest. Like you said, the short answer is no, Mike, we don't have a time, but we're going to gauge.
We're going to gauge, bitches.
We're going to gauge.
So, okay. Most important question of the day. Obligatory answer. I need vinyl. You guys going to press on vinyl?
Will?
Yo!
Nice.
Yeah, alright, so we wanted vinyl for even the DSC Ray, but the issue is you can only put so much on one side of the vinyl.
Absolutely.
And we ideally wanted the full versions and the instrumental versions, you know, to be the side A, side B. The issue with the album is it is more tracks than we've ever put out at one point.
You said put out.
Ayo! So I don't know if you've noticed in the time that you're doing a little light cyber stalking of us, is that Pathways has a history of releasing instrumental versions of the songs.
I have noticed that.
We don't know if we're going to put instrumental versions of the songs. We do have them done, mixed, and ready, but they were written to have a vocalist in mind. So if we do have an instrumental, the idea of having a vinyl full version and a vinyl instrumental is less likely, as opposed to one all-on-one. However, we can't fit both sides on one vinyl. So if we do only release it as just the music, no instrumental versions, vinyl is a very, very big possibility. If we do decide to do the instrumental release, it might not get to happen other than maybe like an anniversary edition. But either way, it's something that we've given a lot of thought to. There's definitely a niche community, and we love it.
So is double vinyl just too cost prohibitive to consider?
And unfortunately, yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many things that a band can do themselves these days in regards to any kind of production for album sales, any kind of merch production for themselves. It's no longer the way it used to be, even as little as 5 years ago, where you had to put down a big chunk of money, buy a bulk of merch, and then mail it out. You can now do print on demand.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of different companies that help out independent artists, which is a big thing of why we're trying to decide of whether we want to go independent. But we really love that in our genre, having an established label not only is, a little bit of a belt of bragging right, but they do have extra connections that is very, very difficult to build as a solo artist.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will give you my address. Well, actually, you have my address for those test pressings. You can just send them here.
Yeah.
So, no, I think that's cool. Vinyl, I've talked about this many times over the course of the last couple of years especially, but, it's facing a resurgence of sorts, and there's something about it that I think people clamor for. I mean, not only is it like a cool collectible piece, but it's also nostalgic, and I think that people really like the interactivity of vinyl where, you're picking it up, you're touching it, you're flipping it over. It's just kind of it's something tangible. Like, and I'm a CD guy too. I still love CDs, and all my friends are like, "Why have fucking CDs? How old are you?" But I mean, so I love physical merch, but there's something about vinyl that is just kind of like a special thing. My dad had a huge vinyl collection, and also a huge reel-to-reel tapes. I grew up listening to reels. I applaud people that go the extra step to get those pressings. And I know that right now with COVID, pressings are like backed up.
Yep.
They're super backed up. I can think of a half a dozen bands from my friends right now that the album is done, everything is done. It's waiting for that pressing.
Yep.
And they're just waiting because they just can't get it back yet. So, cost factors aside, there's a real possibility that we'll get a vinyl off you, depending on what route you decide to go with the instrumental.
Oh yeah,
take on
it's
things.
a want. It's 100% of a want, for sure.
Cool. Well, there's also a lot of bands have done things like version 1, version 2. So yeah, we'll look forward to that anniversary edition, but maybe 11 months early.
Could happen.
One month, one the next month. Hey, why not? Let me ask you this. I've asked this of a lot of people. So you kind of touched on the fact that back in the day it was like, I should say, artist success was based off of album sales, and then that kind of shifted. It went by the wayside, and it became tour. Do the grind, travel around. Albums and contracts kind of went by the wayside. It became an album by album thing, and then we got into people releasing independently, hence why tours became the big thing. Now we're seeing physical products become the norm again. So do you see Pathways as, and I'm speaking financially, but I just mean in terms of exposure, that you will get the bulk of your exposure from the releasing of albums, or do you think it will come from releasing of videos or other kind of media? How do you see Pathways getting back into the fold of public awareness?
I think that right now it's important to see the changes and to embrace the changes that are happening right now. Case in point being things like TikTok. So we saw things happening where we were just talking about how self-sufficient and how surprising it is how you could be self-sufficient when it comes to these things like distributions and whatnot. Even recording, it's so easy to record and mix and master, compared to what it was like. Our methodology right now is to just scorched earth like a motherfucker on every single platform. And every platform has its time and place. We're certainly not going to segregate any platform. Artists right now are getting signed off of TikTok. We know that because mind blown. And we actually learned that semi-recently. A lot of the new signings are from TikTok. Who'da thunk, you know? And it's just we're a victim of the times, and we have to adapt or perish. And, you know, so again, to answer your question, we're going to use and abuse every single method in our hustle.
I have a confession to make. I've never TikToked. I don't even really know what it is, aside from the fact that people tell me about it.
It will happen.
The future is now, old man.
I know, I am. Like, I even need to have knobs and buttons on my shit. Like, I still struggle with touchscreens. Like, I can't text on my phone. I've had it for like 20 years now, and I still can't do it.
Yeah.
I like to have things that click and make noise. Hence, even my rack gear has knobs on it, you know.
Yep.
So, the whole idea of the digital age that we're in, I've accepted it. I like it. Like, I'm not averted to it, but I struggle with the full integration because I still just don't understand it as well. You know, TikTok is one of those still frontiers, you know, the great frontier, the Star
newer.
Trek of social media for me. The new frontier of where things are going, and but it's cool. I mean, so you guys have embraced that technology and that digital age. You've more or less done this entire project yourself, recording, mixing, mastering. You've handled all of the technical elements.
Sure.
And I'm seeing more of that, and I think I appreciate it more because the artists, you know, when it comes down to selling merch or selling materials, it's all going back to the artist, whether or not it's for profit or whether or not it's just to keep putting something out there to the world that your fan base can get their hands on without having to have, you know, labels and A&R reps and publicists kind of get their piece, or at the, you know, best case scenario sometimes just hold up the progress.
Oiling the machine.
Yeah, lubing it up. So yeah, that's cool. What else then do we need to know about where you guys are at? We've talked about a lot of stuff. There's some cool new things coming. What haven't we touched on that we need to get out to the world?
I think that you've done a great job of asking us questions that aren't just mundane, and that the big news that we really want everyone to know is that we have a new song coming out March 26th. We finally finished the album. It has a release date for the next single within this year. Whether it's going to be through independent or through support is something that we're trying to gauge on which one is more realistic and which one's going to be more beneficial. But we've done a lot of research, we spent a lot of time, we have a lot of content, and we're just ready to start putting it out to the people who really want to hear it.
Cool. So if people want to drink your Kool-Aid and join the cult, how do they find you on social media? Where do they go on March 26th to get this epic new material? How do they find you?
They can find us on every major streaming platform, whether it be Spotify, Deezer, or Apple Music, and they'll be able to watch the official video for Great Old Ones on YouTube at Pathways Band. They'll be able to find us on just about any social media at Pathways Band, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, even the whole nine, baby.
Pornhub.
Yeah, that's right.
That's next.
Yeah, OnlyFans coming up. And you'll be able to find us on any major platform. We'll be sharing it and running ads so we can try and connect with people who haven't even heard of us yet.
Awesome. And so you heard it here, folks. Wait, March 26th is almost here. I'd like to thank you guys for hanging out with me today on Misery Point Radio. This has been awesome. Open door for you guys. Anytime you got stuff you want to promote, just give me a call. We'll make it happen. We'll help you promote the shit out of this album. I'm really excited for it. I'm excited for you guys.
Thank you.
Honored that you would drive all the way from Florida to come to my house here. And no, this has been great. So John, Eric, Kyle, Will, thanks for being here today, man. This has just been an
Thank you so
absolute
much.
blast.
Thank you,
Yeah,
man.
thank you,
Absolute
Mike. You're the
pleasure.
man, dude. Thank
By
you
the way,
so
Mike
much.
makes the best cappuccino I think I've had in this entire state.
He also
come on
makes an
down.
outstanding old-fashioned.
Old-fashioned as well.
Yeah, come to the Misery Point Radio Studios. You can have some drinks. I'll make you coffee. I'll make you an old-fashioned, and we'll have a hell of a time. We will see you guys very soon. Thank you very much.